Have you ever found yourself standing in a room, utterly blank as to why you walked in there? Or maybe you've been chatting with a dear friend, someone you've known for ages, and they repeat a story they just told you not 5 minutes before. We often laugh these moments off, don't we? Oh, just another senior moment, we might chuckle. But what if some of these seemingly small slips, these tiny cognitive stumbles, are more than just a part of getting older? What if they're quiet, almost imperceptible signals from your brain, hinting that something more profound, something like dementia, might be stirring? It's a sobering thought, I know. The idea that our minds, the very core of who we are, could begin to betray us is deeply unsettling. And statistics tell us that millions across the globe are facing this reality. But here's a crucial piece of understanding I want to share with you today. Dementia rarely arrives like a sudden storm. More often, it begins as a series of soft whispers, subtle shifts in behavior, memory, or even physical abilities that can go unnoticed, or worse, be dismissed for years. Are we listening closely enough to these whispers? Are we equipped to recognize them before they become a roar? Now let's be clear. Aging naturally brings changes. Our bodies might not be as spry, and yes, we might forget a name or two, but it's vital, absolutely vital, to distinguish between the normal ebb and flow of an aging mind and those persistent, concerning red flags that could indicate something more serious is afoot. And here's where I believe we can find a measure of empowerment. Recognizing these signs early isn't about inviting fear. It's about opening a window for action. It's about giving ourselves or our loved ones the best possible chance to slow its progression, to safeguard our precious memories, our cherished independence, and the quality of life we all deserve to live for as long as possible. So, in our conversation today, we're going to explore some of these early, often overlooked indicators of dementia. And more than just listing symptoms, I want us to think critically. We'll look at what might be happening beneath the surface, and importantly, what proactive steps, what simple yet powerful changes we can consider to keep our minds as sharp and resilient as possible. Some of these might surprise you, perhaps even challenge some long-held beliefs. Others might resonate deeply, maybe a little too close for comfort. But my hope is that by the end of our time together, you'll feel more informed, more prepared, and perhaps even a bit more hopeful. Before we dive in, I'm curious, what aspect of your health journey are you most focused on right now? Is it maintaining your cognitive sharpness, ensuring your physical mobility, or perhaps nurturing your emotional well-being? Go ahead and share your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely value hearing from you, and it helps us all learn from each other's experiences. And if you find this discussion valuable, do consider subscribing to our channel. We're building a community here, dedicated to navigating these health topics together. All right, let's begin with something you might not immediately connect with brain health. The way you walk. You might notice your steps aren't as long as they used to be. Perhaps there's a bit of a shuffle, or maybe your posture isn't as upright. It's easy to think, well, that's just wear and tear, a bit of arthritis, or simply getting older. But what if these subtle changes in your gait, your balance, or even your coordination are actually your brain trying to send out an early warning? Think about it. Walking isn't just a leg function, it's a complex symphony orchestrated by your brain. Areas like the frontal lobe and the cerebellum are working hard, ensuring your movements are coordinated, your balance is steady, and your steps are sure. When these brain regions begin to experience changes, even very early on in conditions like dementia, it can manifest physically You might observe someone starting to walk with shorter, more hesitant steps, their feet perhaps not lifting as high, leading to a shuffling sound. Or maybe they lean slightly, or their walking pace has noticeably slowed down. This isn't merely about aging muscles, it can be a reflection of neurological shift. Indeed, some fascinating research, like a study you might have heard about published in Neurology, followed a large group of seniors and found a compelling link. Those individuals who exhibited slower walking speeds or poorer balance had a significantly increased risk of developing dementia down the line. It's as if our legs can sometimes offer a very early glimpse into the future health of our brain. But it's not just about walking, is it? What about struggling with tasks that require fine motor skills? Difficulty buttoning a shirt, a new clumsiness when using utensils, or finding it harder to rise from a chair without using your arms. These too can be subtle indicators that the brain's motor control centers are being affected. We tend to brush these off, don't we? Oh, I'm just a bit clumsy today, or my hands are a bit stiff. But are we paying close enough attention to the pattern? Could it be more? My own observation here is that we often focus so intently on memory as the hallmark of dementia that these physical clues get sidelined. Yet, the brain is an interconnected system. What affects one part can ripple outwards. So, if you or a loved one are noticing these persistent changes in movement, it's worth considering, not just from a physical therapy perspective, but also as a potential piece of a larger puzzle related to cognitive health. Perhaps it's a prompt to engage in exercises that specifically target balance and coordination, like Tai Chi or gentle yoga, which can benefit both body and brain. What are your thoughts on this connection between physical movement and brain health? Have you noticed this in anyone or experienced it yourself? Now let's consider another area that can be quite unsettling: changes in how we perceive the world around us. Imagine you're pouring a drink and you misjudge it, spilling it. Or perhaps you bump into door frames more often, or feel a sudden unease navigating stairs you've used countless times. These aren't just moments of carelessness. They could be signals that your brain's ability to process spatial information and depth is subtly altering. Dementia, particularly in its early stages, can quietly meddle with our spatial awareness. This isn't just about judging distances. It can extend to depth perception, making it harder to navigate uneven surfaces or gauge how far away an object truly is. And it's not limited to vision. What about other senses? Have you ever heard that a diminished sense of smell can be an early indicator? It's true. Research, including studies from the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, has highlighted that olfactory loss, a reduced ability to detect and identify smells, can be one of the very first neurological changes in conditions like Alzheimer's, sometimes appearing even before significant memory problems surface. Think about that, not being able to identify common smells like coffee or roses or even smoke. One particular study rather alarmingly suggested that seniors who struggled to identify a panel of common odors had a markedly higher likelihood of developing dementia within a few years. It's a profound thought, isn't it? That something as seemingly simple as our sense of smell could hold such critical clues. And what about hearing? You might find yourself in a crowded room, struggling to follow conversations, feeling overwhelmed by background noise. While it could be straightforward hearing loss, and untreated hearing difficulties are indeed linked to a higher dementia risk due to increased cognitive load, it can also be a sign that the brain is having trouble filtering and processing auditory information effectively. From my perspective, these sensory changes are particularly insidious because they can dramatically impact confidence and independence. If you're unsure of your footing, or if the world feels spatially confusing, you might start to withdraw, to avoid unfamiliar environments or even activities you once enjoyed. This isn't just about the senses themselves. It's about how the brain interprets the signals they send. It's a processing issue. And it makes me wonder, how often are these subtle sensory shifts dismissed as just getting older when they might be an early whisper from a brain under duress? It underscores the importance of regular hearing and vision checks, certainly, but also paying attention to these less obvious sensory changes. Have you ever experienced or witnessed these kinds of spatial or sensory challenges? How did it make you or them feel? Let's turn our attention to something that affects so many of us: sleep, or more accurately, the lack of it. You go to bed hoping for a restful night, but find yourself waking up at 1 a.m., then 3 a.m., then maybe 4:30 a.m. Tossing, turning, perhaps even more active disturbances like talking or moving dramatically in your sleep. Does this sound familiar? We often blame stress, a bad mattress, or simply getting older for our sleep woes. But what if persistent, significant sleep disruption is one of the brain's earliest cries for help, a potential harbinger of cognitive decline? Research, for instance, from JAMA Neurology has drawn a strong connection between frequent sleep disturbances, especially conditions like REM sleep behavior disorder, and a significantly higher risk of developing dementias, including Lewy body dementia. These aren't just vivid nightmares. They can involve kicking, punching, shouting, often years before any noticeable memory loss appears. It's quite a striking thought that the way we behave in our sleep could foreshadow future brain health issues. And it extends beyond just those dramatic nighttime episodes. What if you suddenly find yourself needing frequent daytime naps, not just a little rest, but an overwhelming urge to sleep during the day, or you're consistently wide awake in the very early hours of the morning for no apparent reason? This could indicate that your circadian rhythm, your brain's internal 24-hour clock, is beginning to misfire. And when that internal clock is disrupted, cognitive decline might not be far behind. Why is this so critical? Well, one prevailing theory is that deep sleep is when our brain performs its essential housekeeping duties. It's during these deep sleep stages that the brain works to clear out metabolic byproducts and toxic proteins like beta amyloid, which are strongly implicated in Alzheimer's disease. If that crucial cleanup process is consistently interrupted by poor sleep, these toxins can accumulate, potentially damaging neurons and accelerating cognitive decline. From my standpoint, this connection between sleep and brain health is one of the most actionable areas we can focus on. While we can't always control the deeper neurological changes, we can often influence our sleep hygiene. This isn't just about feeling less tired, it's about actively protecting our brain. Are we creating a restful sleep environment? Are we managing stress effectively? Are we avoiding stimulants like caffeine too close to bedtime? If persistent sleep problems are a reality for you or a loved one, it's not something to just endure. It warrants a conversation with a healthcare professional, not just for the sake of better sleep, but potentially for the long-term health of your brain. What are your strategies for a good night's sleep? And have you ever considered the deeper implications of sleep disturbances for cognitive function? Now, let's talk about something that can be incredibly painful for families to witness: a slow, quiet detachment from life. Perhaps you or a loved one used to adore gardening, never missed a weekly card game, or relished family gatherings. But now, There's a distinct lack of interest. Plans get cancelled, phone calls go unanswered, and there's a sense of emptiness rather than overt sadness. This isn't just a bad mood. It could be apathy, one of dementia's earliest and most subtle emotional fingerprints. It's crucial to understand that apathy is different from depression, though they can sometimes coexist. Depression often involves feelings of sadness, hopelessness, and guilt. Apathy, on the other hand, is more of a blunting of emotion, a loss of motivation, a lack of interest in things that once brought joy. And according to research, including a significant 2020 study in neurology, apathy can be a strong predictor of cognitive decline, particularly in Alzheimer's disease. It's thought to occur because the motivation circuits within the brain are beginning to break down. You might observe this as a reduced emotional expressiveness, fewer smiles, less laughter, perhaps not tearing up during a poignant moment. Or it might manifest as a seeming indifference to surroundings or social interactions, even with close family. Tasks that were once routine, like preparing a meal or engaging in a hobby, can suddenly feel overwhelming, not because of physical inability, but due to a lack of inner drive. Over time, this emotional withdrawal can lead to increased isolation, which, as we know, can unfortunately accelerate cognitive decline. It's a vicious cycle. What I find particularly challenging about apathy is how easily it can be misinterpreted by loved ones. It might be mistaken for stubbornness, laziness, or just being difficult. There can be a lot of frustration when a person no longer seems to care about things they once valued. But understanding that this could be a neurological symptom, a sign of changes within the brain, can shift our perspective from frustration to compassion and a search for supportive strategies. It emphasizes the need to gently encourage engagement, to find activities that might still spark a flicker of interest, even if it's different from before, and to maintain social connections as much as possible. Have you ever encountered this kind of emotional withdrawal, and how did you navigate it? It's a delicate and often heartbreaking aspect of these conditions. Of course, when we think of dementia, memory loss is often the first thing that comes to mind. We all forget things occasionally, don't we? A name might escape us, or we might misplace our keys. That's part of being human. But when forgetfulness starts to consistently interfere with daily life, when it becomes a pattern rather than an isolated incident, that's when we need to pay closer attention. Dementia-related memory loss isn't typically about forgetting where you put your car keys once in a blue moon. It's more about repeatedly misplacing them and then being unable to retrace your steps to find them. Or, more concerningly, forgetting what the keys are for in the first place. It's about repeating the same stories or questions in a short space of time without any awareness of having said them before. It's missing important appointments even with reminders, or forgetting entire recent conversations or significant events. The Alzheimer's Association consistently highlights that difficulties with short-term memory are among the most common early signs of Alzheimer's disease, and it's qualitatively different from typical age-related forgetfulness. In these early stages, long-term memories, recollections from childhood or early adulthood might remain surprisingly intact. It's the new information, the day-to-day happenings that just don't seem to stick. This can be incredibly frustrating and frightening, not only for the person experiencing it, but also for their family and friends. You might also see other manifestations, like difficulty managing finances, forgetting to take medications, or problems with tasks that require planning and organization. These aren't just minor inconveniences, they can impact safety and independence. My personal reflection here is that while memory loss is a known sign, the nature of that memory loss is key. It's the disruption to daily functioning that signals something more serious. And it's also important to remember that dementia affects more than just memory. Focusing solely on memory can sometimes mean we miss other crucial signs, like the changes in movement, sensory perception, sleep, or emotional state that we've already discussed. It's about seeing the whole picture. If these kinds of memory challenges are becoming evident, it's not a time for shame or denial, but a time to seek understanding and support from healthcare professionals. What are your thoughts on how society views memory loss, and how can we foster a more supportive environment for those experiencing these changes? We've journeyed through some challenging territory today, exploring these early, often subtle signs. It can feel overwhelming, I know. The thought of dementia touching our lives or the lives of those we care about is a heavy one. But here's what I want to leave you with. While a definitive cure for many forms of dementia remains elusive for now, that does not mean we are powerless. Knowledge is power, and early awareness is a critical tool. Recognizing these signs isn't about succumbing to fear, it's about opening the door to proactive strategies. It's about understanding that lifestyle choices, things like regular physical activity, a brain-healthy diet, quality sleep, continuous learning, and strong social connections, aren't just vague suggestions. They are scientifically supported approaches that can genuinely help protect brain health and potentially delay cognitive decline. Moreover, managing chronic conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, and even hearing loss is paramount, as these can significantly impact brain health. And the landscape of medical research is evolving. There's more hope on the horizon than ever before, with new diagnostic tools and emerging treatments that aim to tackle the underlying causes of conditions like Alzheimer's, not just the symptoms. But these interventions often rely on early detection. That's why being attuned to these initial whispers, these early signs, is so incredibly important. So, if anything we've discussed today has resonated with you, if you've noticed some of these signs in yourself or someone you care about, please don't ignore them. Don't brush them off. Start a conversation with a trusted healthcare provider. Getting an accurate understanding of what's happening is the first step towards accessing the right support, the right resources, and the right strategies. I truly believe that by fostering awareness, encouraging open conversations, and embracing proactive health measures, we can change the narrative around dementia. We can move from a place of fear to one of informed action and compassionate support. Thank you for joining me in this important discussion. If this has been helpful, or if you have experiences or insights you'd like to share, please do leave a comment below. Your voice matters in this community.